Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Brittnee. So today I'm testing out a new bar mold for the first time. It is one that Grayus had sent me in that big package a couple months ago, and I'm excited to see how it turns out. For today's design, I'm just going to be playing around with two different colors of teal and some edible luster dust, and I'm going to be doing it all without an airbrush. Before we get going, today's subscriber highlight is Martin Tallinger. I hope I pronounced that right. You always give me a good chuckle, and your comment about Mr. Ed made me laugh because my dad always makes a joke about that horse. Anyway, thanks for always commenting and for your support. All right, guys, let's get going. So here is the bar mold we'll be using today. It is Grayus 3814. For cocoa butters, I'm going to use teal from Chef Rubber. And then I already had this breakfast blue lightened with white that I'll use, but you could also mix a little of the teal with white to get a lighter turquoise teal color that's really similar to this. And then this edible luster dust is Roxy and Rich Emerald, and I'll link all of these below. My mold is already clean and I polished it with food safe ethanol and cotton balls. To get started on this design, I'm going to mix my edible luster dust with some lemon extract. You can also use vodka for this or food safe ethanol. The reason we use high alcohol to mix luster into the paint is that it will evaporate really quickly and just leave behind the luster. There is no set ratio for this. I just eyeball it until I like the consistency. And I love this cute little dropper because it makes adding in the liquid really easy. I'll be using this small round brush, but for no particular reason really. You can use any shaped brush here that you like. I use a paintbrush to apply on the luster, but then I use a small sponge brush to blend it and thin it out a little bit. Rather than apply the luster paint randomly, I'm trying to focus on certain areas to highlight so that it helps to bring out the pattern of the mold. So I chose something that was easy for my eyes to recognize, which is this rounded area of the mold. And I just repeat this process in every part of the mold that has that rounded shape of the pattern, even up against the edges. You'll notice at first the blue food coloring in the luster dust paint looks really bright and fluid, but once it dries, it basically disappears and leaves just the sparkles. Next, I take my dark teal cocoa butter, which is tempered, and I apply it first on all of the areas with the luster dust to kind of help lock it in. The reason I don't use a paintbrush is because if I stroke the cocoa butter on it, it can wipe off the luster. If I didn't want that to happen, I could have mixed the luster dust with cocoa butter instead of alcohol, but I knew that dabbing cocoa butter on after, over the top, would be fine for what I'm going for, so I just did it this way instead. And that means I had one less cocoa butter to have to mix and temper. I also didn't mind if the luster moved a little bit as I apply the cocoa butter because that just makes it look cooler. So I apply the cocoa butter first to all of the areas where there is luster dust, and then I kind of just dab it onto all of the rest of the mold. I tried to make those areas thinner so there would be some variation in the color, but honestly this cocoa butter was pretty thick, so wherever I touched became pretty dark. This is part of the difference between hand painting and airbrushing. If I were to have airbrushed this color, it would be a lot more teal and bright, but by hand painting, because of the thickness, it can sometimes look really, really dark, and this almost looks black. I keep the surface of my mold clean by wiping it off every once in a while on a clean paper towel throughout the decoration process. To get into the corners of the mold, I use a paintbrush rather than a sponge. And then I also want to make sure I touch every blank area of the mold with at least a thin coat of the dark teal. If I don't, the lighter teal behind it will stand out more than I want it to. So now I have my tempered light teal cocoa butter, and I'm going to coat the whole mold. This is to help brighten up the dark teal, because if I back it with milk chocolate without a brighter color, it might look too dark. And rather than use white, I use lighter teal, so that if there is a really thin area, it still has a teal color showing through rather than a bright white. I start by filling in all the edges and corners with a small brush, and then I switch to a larger brush to just do a thin coat against the large flat portion of the bar. Here's what the mold looks like, all finished before we fill it. I've tempered some milk chocolate in my warming tank, and I'm going to shell the bars just like I would any regular chocolate mold for bonbons. Even though my bar is going to be mostly solid tempered chocolate, I am still shelling them first to protect the design. This will give a thin layer of chocolate that is able to fall into all of the fine corners of the mold to give a clean design. Plus, it also protects the surface so that the crunchy add-ins don't fall to the bottom of the mold and show through the design. Here's what I'm flavoring my bars with today. I have some leftover caramel I want to use to add a caramel ribbon into the bar. Then for some crunch, I'm adding in these Calibut Dark Crispy Pearls and some corn flakes. Just for reference, I added 2 tablespoons of Dark Crispies and 3 small handfuls of the corn flakes to fill 1 mold with 3 cavities. I start by piping my salted caramel ribbon into the mold. Now I add my tempered milk chocolate into my crunchies and mix it together. I estimated about 1/2 cup of chocolate for each bar, though you'll see later I do end up having leftover chocolate filling. Now I just carefully spoon the crunchy chocolate into the mold. Today I was experimenting and wanted the bottom surface to be flat, so I left enough room to cap the bars, but you definitely don't have to. A lot of flavored bars have lumpy bottoms, and that's okay too. After capping the bars, I let them sit out at room temperature for about 10 minutes until they began to set up and the surface went from shiny to matte. Then I popped them into the fridge to contract from the mold for about 25 minutes. And now it's time to unmold them. I like to use this acrylic plate when I unmold bars to help me flip them over onto. If you unmold the bars the same way you unmold bonbons by flipping over the whole mold onto the counter, the bars can crack really easily, so avoid doing that or all your hard work will be wasted. Here are the finished bars. This mold shape is so shiny, it's crazy. It looks so cool. These did come out a lot darker than I originally intended, but I think they still look cool. They are giving a little bit of outer space. In person, they're a bit more teal, but on this camera, they kind of look black. For some reason on my phone camera, you can tell a little bit more that they're teal rather than black. And you can also see the detail of the sparkles maybe a little bit better. So here's some footage of that. All right, guys, there is a simple bar mold design and flavor idea for you. I hope that you enjoyed the video and that you learned something new. If you did, please leave me a like and a comment down below. In the comments, tell me what is your favorite crunchy add-in for a bar mold. I'm curious and I love to hear new ideas. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, today's the day. If you'd like to see something else that's sweet, just click on one of these thumbnails. Thanks so much for watching today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.